And hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Price and Presley Spook Show. I am Terry Price.
I am Harold Presley. Welcome once again to the regular guy look at what is spooky, paranormal stuff that you just can't explain. Maybe can't go to sleep afterwards. And sometimes, man, we had a previous show that kind of stayed with me about this spooky house, and we're gonna have those people back. We got gonna have Laura and Josh coming up here again in just a minute or two. But again, if you got a spooky story, something paranormal, some UFO sighting, Bigfoot, whatever it might be, and you say, "Oh, I had something happen to me, I want to share it with you," well, send it to us at pricepresleyshow@gmail.com.
You know, and that brings up a good point. Sharing sometimes is really good for people who are really shook up about something.
It really is. I mean, talking
about
it.
You don't have to tell us your name. You don't even have to tell us exactly where it happened.
Nope.
We will keep you confidential, and we will never give away your true identity if you don't want us to. But maybe sometimes just talking about what happened might help you get a little bit of clarity or put a little end on the whole situation.
It's amazing to me, some of these emails we've gotten, and I've had people, personal friends of mine that know we do this podcast here, and they shared these stories with me that I didn't have any idea. I went, "What? That happened to you?" I was like, "Oh my goodness."
Well, people think that if they talk about it, that they're automatically going to be considered kooky.
Yeah,
or
that's what they said. That's exactly what they said.
Batshit crazy.
Batshit crazy.
Yeah,
that's right.
But we don't think that. We don't judge anybody. We listen to the story and we don't make judgments. We don't try to tell you what it is or it isn't.
We just want to hear about it, man. We like being entertained. We want to hear it. We think it's entertaining, and we want to share that with you. And again, you want to. Got some previous podcasts up there you want to check out. Go to our YouTube page, and when you're there, subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Our Facebook page, you can follow us there. You got information there as well. Go to facebook.com/Price Presley Spook Show. So you can find us there as well.
And in the down in the comment section, I will put a link to our Patreon account if you want to be a patron here on the Spook Show.
Yeah.
We have several little different rewards for becoming a patron, and hopefully that'll be up by now.
And we got some swag that you can buy too.
Maybe we do definitely have swag.
T-shirts and all kinds of caps, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I'm planning on doing a T-shirt with Harold's face on it. When he's spooked out and his eyes are big and round, and he's about to say, "Hell no!"
There's no need for that. There's no reason for that.
Well, if you listen to the first episode of the Portsmouth house in Virginia with Laura and Josh McDaniels, you'll know that there's a whole lot more that we need to cover. So I'm going to shut up, and we're just going to turn it over.
This sounds like a movie. I mean, the stuff that's happened to them, it sounds like something out of a movie. It really
it's spooky. I mean, it is spooky.
I'd never believe it if it wasn't
This
real.
Isn't just your regular bump in the night kind of thing.
All right. So welcome back to the show, Laura and Josh. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Glad to have you guys back. And we talked last time about I think we left off talking about Josh was in the attic up there talking. He just put his foot down. Which entity was this you were talking to? I think you named that one, didn't you?
I think that one was Peter. Was the name that we gave that one. I think.
Yeah.
And you
kept saying Peter, or someone kept hearing the name Peter.
So we just called him Peter.
We just called it Peter.
And you said, Peter, Peter, man, you got to make a decision. This is not your house anymore.
Yeah, Peter, don't be a dick.
Yeah, come on, Peter. Don't be an asweepe.
Pull a whole Lord of the Rings thing. You cannot pass.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all well and good until you hear "my precious."
Yes.
All right, so Laura, you were about to tell us that you found out some information about the land that the house and, in fact, the whole entire neighborhood sat on. Why don't we pick up there, and then you can go back into what else happened from that. I understand that Mike had a pretty tough time with this later on, so let's pick it up there.
Yeah.
And again, just to identify the place, Portsmouth, Virginia is what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, the home itself was only 100, I want to say 1900s or late 1800s.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's only 100 and something years old. And in Virginia, you can say only in that statement because there are homes that date way further back.
Oh yeah,
1700s or possibly more, because I'm not a history expert by any means. It's littered with history. So having an old building, when people are like, "Oh, your house is really old," I'm like, kind of, but not. The land itself used to be plantation property. And the man had several daughters, and he built them all homes on the same property. And I heard nice things, like the woman who lived in one of the original homes on the property. She informed me the house she had belonged to one of the nicer daughters who ends up moving on to, I believe, New York or something like that with her husband, because they did not condone the family and what the family treated people like. So this property, the landowner was not very kind, and they were slave owners at the time. And my neighbor, who initially told us we're not crazy, our house is haunted, her home was actually also one of the original homes on the property. Her home was actually slave quarters, and her home was very active as well. And she also had several archaeological digs happen at her house. She had some of the colleges nearby who showed up to do different digs to protect some of the things she had found in her basement, which was like different pots, knickknacks or token, trinkets. And she goes, I need to call somebody. She had been doing renovations and realized, she knew she lived in an older home, but she didn't realize what it was yet. And so when somebody arrived to take a look at everything, they're like, do you know anything about your house? And she said, no. And the archaeology group that came out had told her this is actually, after doing some research on the area, that her home was considered what would be slave quarters back when, and these were their things. And she goes, oh my gosh, that explains so much. And so she tells us that, she informs us of that. She said that they later found out that the owners of the property originally were not very kind people. They were not respected in the area, and lots of bad things happened, which is where they left it. They did not go into detail with us about what bad things were. One can assume. So, our house sat on land, and they said that the lady who was diagonal to us, there would have been several homes like hers. And they actually found on the land map that several of the foundational homes to these quarters were right near our home, and people behind us and the people to the, what would you say, the right of us. So they would have extended, and her home was the only one left that had been basically kept in working intact. And not only that, but like revamped and turned into an actual home, because she had all the things. So she when she moved in with her family, she said, I had no idea. I thought it was just a cute little house. I just went down to the basement one day and all this came out of the wall, and I was like, whoa. and she ends up finding this out about her house. And I think there were some larger homes in the area that you could tell is where he had built homes for his daughters to live in, and they were your standard colonial homes.
The fairly large size.
Well, tell me this, Laura and Josh. Did you ever get to the point to find out what the bad things were that happened?
Well, if
they mistreated people,
they mistreated
slavery.
Well, we figured that, but
yeah.
As far as the actual details of that go, no, but we could tell by some of the stuff we were able to recover.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly painting a good light on it. And if I remember correctly,
I don't think there's any way to paint it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was even some of the stuff that got lost in a fire too. So a lot of the records we were trying to dig and find, some of them were just gone.
He was also abusive to his family.
Yeah.
And this doesn't happen at our house. Where his original house is at, I don't know, but I know one of his daughter's homes was directly behind us and to the left. One of the daughter's homes is at the opening to the neighborhood itself. And then we had one surviving slave quarters. And then we had a house towards the back that I believe was his son's home with his wife.
It is that type of neighborhood that even today, once you turn down the road to go into it, you get this very weird vibe.
Really?
And, yeah. And
what was the military connection that you guys had alluded to?
Well, so because of the sizes, and of course, you guys remember what happened on December 7th, 1941.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Pearl Harbor was attacked. Well, this place, because of the naval activity there, they shipped a lot of these survivors, the families, and a lot of them, they got them out of Hawaii and brought them over there and housed them.
Oh, I see.
And so, because the size of the house, they split it into a duplex where they could, house multiple families, which we started discovering that
We were like, why does it have to?
why are there all this
Ah,
multiple
and that's
electrical
why.
lines.
Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
So-
makes sense.
So that's why we think some of the activity, because some of the things we were seeing were probably tied to that.
Yeah.
That made sense.
Or
some of the
updates to
entities,
the home.
the updates,
We had
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the tinier spirits in the house that did not do much. She consistently did the same thing every day. We saw a woman who scares the crap out of Heather. She's doing her makeup one day, looking in the mirror, doing her mascara, and there's a lady walking behind her, and she jumps half a
Oh
mile.
my God.
Good Lord.
And
I would have
the
too.
lady, yeah, the lady goes right past her. She said she didn't even look at her. She didn't address her, nothing. She was wearing older clothing. And she said, and then she just disappears into my floor. And the part where
Whoa,
she,
whoa. What do you mean
Yeah.
she disappears into my floor? What does that mean?
Kind of like
There's-
she walks around in circles and then just slowly, kind of like an elevator,
yeah.
goes down.
Just go down.
So-
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we told the neighbors about this, and the neighbors go, "Oh, did she disappear into the spot that has the square? Because there was a square in their room in the floor that didn't look right. It looked like someone had just laid down plywood instead of like the hardwood flooring that went throughout the home." And we were always like, "What is this spot? Why is it here?" And then the neighbors end up filling in the dots. They said, "Well, your home used to originally had a wrought iron staircase,
A spiral
that ran-
staircase.
Oh, it's fine.
Yep.
Yes. Heather said, that explains why she went through the floor, because she was turning. So this particular spirit just does that. That's all it does.
So that's a
It-
classic case of a residual haunting.
Yeah.
Sounds like to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never interactive, just the same
Yeah.
motion every time.
Yeah.
That was one of the milder ones.
And so, as far as the home goes, we found out that it was used for Pearl Harbor families
Yeah.
and divided into two for a time, before it was later bought by a single owner and turned back into a single family home.
Right.
Well,
So
okay. So now at this point, you guys have had, you've only been in the house for a very short time, just what, a week or two? When
No,
No.
By this point, this was more like what, 4 months at this point?
4 months?
4 months. Okay, 4
Yeah.
months.
4 to
okay.
6 months. Yeah.
All right. And Mike is at this point still an unbeliever, trying to deny.
Yeah, he was confused. His interest was piqued, and he said that, but he was like, I'm still not sold that this is what we're dealing with. And I even told him, I said, I've been a lot of places and seen some things I can't explain, but I will tell you this, that is the most blatant I have ever heard, or I guess seen. Like the girl, I saw her, I know what I saw, and that was blatantly right in front of us. And how can you possibly still have any question in your mind?
For those that
But he
haven't, those that didn't listen to the previous show, Laura,
Go listen to it.
yeah, you need to listen to it. But Laura did see a little girl that looked like a real person standing in her kitchen late one night, and that's what she's referring to there.
So Mike knows about that. He knows about Heather seeing the woman walk behind her, as she was doing her hair or whatever she was doing, right?
Yes.
He knows about that. But at this point, he hasn't had any firsthand thing happen to him.
Oh yeah, no, he was part of the group in the group discussion where we heard the stomping up the stairs,
Yeah, but
and this
he heard that, but he didn't see anything. So I'm saying
he didn't.
Right.
Yeah, he has not seen anything.
he just
So-
heard a noise. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
even at this point too, he spent. I know in between when he was working all that, he spent a lot of time in the man cave.
Yeah.
And sometimes, so there was stuff he experienced, but still refused to believe.
Refused to. Okay.
So
He still don't
one
believe
night-
it.
That could
Yeah,
be,
one
that level of stubbornness can really be dangerous in this situation.
Or it could have been the fact he just didn't want to believe it, make it real. He knew it was real. He just didn't want to make it real. But if he acknowledges it,
Possible.
it won't be
That's
real.
true.
As long as I don't acknowledge it, it's not real.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
That can work actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one night, all three of us are at work,
Yeah.
and he's at home, and our manager comes up to Heather and I and says, "Hey, I need to see y'all in the office," and tells us that Mike is calling up there and saying, he's going to call the police. that there's a person at the house
Oh my gosh.
and he needs us to either come home or he's calling the police. And
No, wait, this
so
is the guy that doesn't believe in any of this stuff.
yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we call him, we go out and we tell Josh what's going on, that Mike's having a hard time. Heather calls Mike, says, hey, why don't you go see if the neighbors are outside, because they always religiously sat on their stoop outside, so we'd always go chit chat with them. And why don't you go be around people? And then eventually the neighbors got tired and they ended up texting us saying, hey, we're sorry, we tried to keep him company as long as we could, but we have kids, we have to get up in the morning, and we all work at a bar. So he calls up a few more times and he's a little hysterical, according to our boss, and he decides to go ahead and have us close out our tables and go home. So we come home and he is waiting outside for us on our stoop, chain smoking his cigarettes, and pacing back and forth, holding a big stick. And
I don't mean to laugh, but
yeah,
it's funny. It's hilarious.
It's hilarious if it's not happening to you.
Me, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all park the cars and we get out and we walk up, and he like parts between Heather and Josh. He parts the way between them and he points his finger at me and goes, you here, come here. And I was like, okay. And he's like, what is happening here? And I was like, I don't know. That's kind of what we were trying to figure out. Like, what's wrong? And he's just washed out. He's shaking. His face is just pale. His voice is cracking. And I just remember the energy coming off of him. And I was like, something really bad happened. And he said, I was in the garage in the back. So we have a carport with a workshop, like I mentioned last time.
Yeah.
And we obviously didn't use the workshop or fill it up, but we had a hanging punching bag out there.
Yeah, more of a workout area.
And and he was outside. Him and his wife both did, what was it, jiu-jitsu, martial arts?
One of the martial arts.
And so he was outside practicing and working out. And we had a motion sensor light in the carport just outside this workshop, which had a garage door. And we had a light on the inside. So he's packing up to go in, he said, and he turns off the light in the garage, thinking nothing of it. And the motion sensor light just outside the door there goes off. And when he stood up, he said there was a man standing there in what looked like really disheveled clothing, but he couldn't see details. All he saw was this man's silhouette. Like, that's how fast it was. He said the light clicked on. I looked up and I just started feeling around on the floor for some of the wood. We had some wood stocked off to the side. He was looking for he said I thought I was about to fight for my life. I thought someone was in the backyard.
Yeah.
And he said, and then as soon as I looked over to grab one of the pieces of wood and looked back, it was gone. So then, of course, he's now got a piece of wood and he's clearing his way to the back door of the house, and nothing is array. There's nothing in the backyard. He gets his dog. He lets, the dog's name was, I don't know if we want to.
That's all right. It's okay. It doesn't matter.
He lets
Spot.
the dog. He lets the dog into the backyard. Yeah, Spot. He lets Spot out, and Spot's like, I love you. There's nothing here. He's acting totally normal, like a normal dog. Nothing was amiss. So he's like, that was odd. Maybe I didn't see anything. So then he goes into the kitchen and he can't shake it, he said. And he made himself something to eat, and then he's like still nervous, so he wants a cigarette. So in this kitchen, and this house was unusual because it used to be a duplex, so there's many, many doors. On the back side of the house, there are 3 doors, one from the second story and 2 from the base. One comes out of a utility closet, which connects to our kitchen, which was kind of like a, what do they call it? It's
Not like a furnace.
it's a navy.
room.
No,
Oh.
well, no, and that's the utility closet, but the type of kitchen. It's a alley
Oh,
kitchen,
a galley.
galley kitchen.
Oh, galley. Oh,
And
yeah.
so
Small.
on one end of this kitchen, you have the utility closet with a door to the backyard, and then on this other side of the on the other side of the kitchen, you have just the regular back door that we would let the dogs out of. And he goes to go smoke a cigarette, and he decides to use the utility closet and open the back door from there. So he gets in the utility closet, lights up, opens the door, and bam, same shadow person right there.
Oh,
Same
crap.
Yeah, and so he like throws his cigarette. He said it's gone. He slammed the door, runs back inside, goes upstairs, can't breathe. That's the first time he calls up to where we worked and is telling our boss, which is when our boss said, "Hey, Mike's really shook up, blah, blah, blah." And so he goes outside and tells the neighbors, who try to stick with him, but he's like, "What is happening here? That was too real. That's real. It's real, isn't it?" And I was just like, Yes, I've seen it. I don't know what I saw, but I've seen it." And he's just really shook up. So at this point, we're all having this big group conversation, and now Mike has joined the party.
Josh, I have to ask you at this point, do you think that it's the same entity that you saw in the attic that you were telling us about in the first show?
Absolutely not.
Completely
The one
different.
outside was totally different.
The way he described that one was not what I saw. What I was seeing was more kind of like closer to my height. The one that he was seeing was just
a petite male figure, and it had ripped up clothing.
Something like it was just kind of
And it was fast.
Very, very fast. I remember that much.
Yeah,
and
because
it stayed. Oftentimes, I kind of like stay in the backyard in the garage.
Yeah,
it would pace in the yard.
It would pace super fast because, like, one night I was home alone and I went outside and smoked a cigarette, and I, was standing on the stoop. I had both of our dogs near us, and literally, the dogs were not responding, but you could see this person shooting back and forth in the yard, and it was just kind of like, oh, okay. And the dogs weren't responding to it, which was really unusual.
That is kind of unusual. Yeah.
Yeah. And so another thing he experienced, this is where we think it started to target him, but he would sit in what we called the man cave, because there was game consoles and stuff in there. So he would sit in there and play his video games. And one day he told us, he's like, "I need to tell y'all something, and I don't know how to say it because I don't want y'all to think I'm crazy." And we're like, "We're fine,
You're in good company.
You're in good company." And he told us there was several times where he would be having a normal day, and it's like he would black out and suddenly be in this different reality where he would end up seeing himself commit suicide
in various
ways.
Oh,
and then
good night.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like one time he was in the man cave playing a video game, for example, and he had a sidearm, but he never had it with him when he's playing video games. Like it was always, kept in their nightstand or something along those lines. But, nobody carried one around the house, or anything like that. He said, "I was playing video games, and then all of a sudden I see myself put down my controller and put a pistol in my mouth and pull the trigger." And it was so graphic. It was horrible. And then all of a sudden I come to, and I'm still here, and I'm playing my video game, and the controller's in my hand, but on the table there's my pistol. And I never went to go get my pistol, guys. I never went to go get my pistol. I never did.
Now, that's some spooky stuff right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
it seemed like
maybe he went to get it. He just don't remember.
Yeah, we did. We
blacked out or something,
like it's psychological.
Subconsciously or something.
But it's not unknown. It's not unknown that certain entities have the ability to influence your mindset and can cause you to do some pretty crazy things. I mean, that's been recorded for forever, to be honest. What did you think about that? Being a neuropsychologist, or a student at that time anyway, what crossed your mind about that, Laura?
I was concerned. I spoke to Heather, and I told her, I said, if it makes you feel more comfortable, talk to Mike, and I would, remove anything, or maybe disperse, like set it up differently where it's not such easy
Access.
to it. I said, have some serious conversations about his last deployment, make sure everything's okay, just to cover that, because I definitely did not leave that unchecked where I said psychologically this could be this and he just doesn't remember
Right.
that he went and did that.
Like PTSD or
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
There's so many things that can happen and people don't always remember it exactly as it did. So we did kind of talk about that to make sure everything was good and make sure that he stayed safe and was communicating about anything going on, which he very adamantly said, no, that's not what happened. And I'm fine. I'm just at the time, I don't know how to give his title. Like, I guess he's a cook.
Yeah.
So he's like, no, I don't even go anywhere. I'm a cook. Why would I have, no. And so we were like, we're just checking, making sure you're okay. That's very unusual, and he's like, I understand, but I know how this went down. And it happened several times with various things, only he didn't always come to with a tool being beside him. That was probably the most dangerous one that happened. Other ones were like seeing himself do something in the kitchen with a knife.
Yeah.
But he didn't come to next to a knife. That's the only time he came to next to a weapon. So I know that they had some serious talks about it, but she said, no, he's sticking to his story. So we did check that off, Harold, and talk about that, because I was kind of like, well, this could be this. But like Terry said, there are some stories out there where people have been influenced, but it's always relied upon in the psych community as this was psychological, because nobody
Right.
can prove that it was
right.
necessarily influenced at all.
Yeah,
Well,
of course, yeah.
You remember in a previous podcast we were talking about demon area possession, and what happens in a situation like that is, if you believe in demons, the entity causes so much commotion, it just continually batters at you and beats at you until finally it breaks you down enough that it can possess that person. And so therefore, and it usually does end up focusing on one specific person. I'm not saying that's what this is, but that it does have some very familiar sounding aspects to it.
Yeah.
And apparently whatever this entity was that he kept seeing or had seen doesn't appear to me to be a nice one.
No. That one was known.
But at the same time, psychological issues is also an answer to what was going on. He could have, being in the military, having been deployed and things like that, he could have seen things that could have affected him greatly and caused some psychological issues as well. But seeing ghosts and stuff certainly doesn't help the situation.
No. So we tried to check off both boxes is how we approached it. And
we did a lot of the group kind of chats and everything. And I remember at one point to kind of try to bring some more clarity to the issue, because I learned from Laura, sometimes if one thing happens, just, okay, it's one time, let's see what happens again, and then see if anybody else says it. So that way we don't do kind of like when you're interviewing people, right? When you're a police officer on scene, you don't want to get all the witnesses together, because then the stories will get convoluted.
Right.
And mix, kind of all that. So we actually at one point had all sat down. I forget at what point we did it, but we decided, okay, let's all get out. We fixed some drinks, sat down, said, here's a notepad. She goes, everybody draw what you've been seeing. And so we've been kind of hinting at, we've been experiencing one of the entities. And when we got done, we laid it down. And what the creepiest thing is we all drew the same thing,
except for artistic differences.
Well, yeah.
But we're talking about this entity that Mike had seen in the garage and in the backyard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you all had seen it by this point.
Yes.
Yes.
And we all drew different ones. Like, I want to say we had predominantly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had
they were constant.
that were constant. We had one that was residual, like you mentioned earlier. She just did the same basic thing every time.
The creepy things is when we started having the animals, specifically the dog.
Yeah, we had a dog that would
growl.
We would all see it out of the corner of our eye, and it would growl, and it would growl at the other dogs in the house. Like, one of our dogs got pulled across the room in front of a large party of people.
Are you kidding me?
So
No,
you,
no.
so you, what,
no.
you saw a dog? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
We would see I guess you'd call it a ghost dog.
Yeah.
I guess
Uh,
it was a
you know,
shadow enough that you
and
could tell
you could
it
hear
was a
it.
It was some
dog.
kind of animal. It would growl at your dog.
Yes.
Yes.
And then at
Now, did your dog notice him? Did your dog notice this?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
our
there was,
dogs did notice it, and
Okay.
they would kind of cower.
I remember one night we were all together down the living room watching a movie, and I forget what it was, but we were watching, and then we heard the growl, and it was very, very distinctive. And we all looked at each other,
Mike said,
and they're like,
"My
"Where?"
dog doesn't make that noise."
Well, and the funny thing is our dog and their dog, we were all in the same
Jumped on
room,
the
and,
couch.
but it was kind of funny because you looked at the dogs, and the dogs kind of looked at each other and looked at us like that wasn't us.
Well, that kind of tingles
Wow.
a memory in the back of my head of stories of hellhounds, and it seems like, and I could be wrong, it seems like I read or saw a story about some hellhound sightings in Portsmouth. I want to say, I don't know if that's true or not. I'll have to do some
Maybe.
research, but that's very interesting.
Yeah.
There was
we saw,
one that was the lady that
Yeah.
she seemed like she was hooked to me for some reason. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
she
would
was.
see her, she would follow me.
she
And
had a flowered dress, and
Yeah.
when we heard the home was possible, like that was turned into a duplex for Pearl Harbor families, we're like, she makes sense now.
because the style of dress
Her
fit
dress.
the era and everything.
And her hair, the exact, design of like the
Yeah.
way she did her hair and everything, so she made sense. And then we had the man that seemed to hang out upstairs in our home, and then a man outside. So these were the predominant figures we dealt with on a daily basis.
There were some that, I mean, you have to admit they were fun. It's kind of like, and when I say fun, it was kind of like, oh, that was cute. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Like we used to on weekends when all of us would have the same weekend off, we would do rock band, right?
One of us would be
And
singing.
one of us is singing, the
With a
other plays it,
microphone.
all that, and we do all that and have fun. And we would take a break and go into the kitchen, maybe fix something to drink, whatnot. And it never failed. Every time we did, we'd be all in the kitchen, and then all of a sudden, across the microphone, you could start hearing the little girl start talking
Humming
and
or
humming,
talking.
or she would try to sing over the microphone.
So
and
you
it would
didn't
go throughout the whole house.
just experience her once, but multiple times.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now
Her handprints on windows.
she
Wow.
leave handprints. There was one time she engaged with me up in the attic, and for some reason I thought it was my daughter because the voice sounded almost similar to hers. And I heard someone go, "Excuse me, hey, can you help me, please?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I turned around, I'm like, "Okay, never mind."
Wow.
And
So
just
that was some of the milder ones. Now the other ones though were
And to be clear, his children did
they
not.
were not in the same state.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And just backing up just a little bit, just to clarify what Terry brought up just a few moments ago about hellhounds and being in Portsmouth. It was Portland,
Portland,
Tennessee.
That's probably
Oh, okay.
that's probably what it was.
Yeah, Portland, Tennessee.
I knew I'd seen something somewhere.
And you know how I know that? Google.
Okay, so
It didn't just come to me in a dream. I didn't imagine it. Okay.
so we're winding down on our time here. So I'd like to get back to Mike and the outcome and what
Yeah.
happened to Mike
What happened
and
to Mike, yeah.
Heather.
Yeah.
Finish that up. Yeah.
So we have several disturbances that end up happening to him and everybody, from banging, stomping, keeping people up, pacing man, out in the garage that would stop and look at the mirrors, pushing people down the stairs. We came home to wet footprints.
What, pushing them?
People got pushed down the stairs?
Pushing, especially Mike.
Wow.
So we came home one night and we found wet footprints going from the upstairs bathroom to mine and Josh's master bedroom door to the window people say they see a woman at. And there was a puddle of water at that window. And we took pictures of it. We put our feet next to it. 'Cause obviously we had not been home, but this was not a child's foot. It was a petite woman's foot. It was very narrow. And we've had handprints. I woke up one day, came downstairs to get a cup of coffee, saw an old man at the sunroom windows, which we had turned into a music room for the piano and some of the other instruments we had. We saw him there, and then when we came outside, we had this leaf pile and a bunch of moss that had grown right there. And Heather goes, she's like, "Oh my gosh, look at this!" And she pulls it back. There's stairs where that old man had been standing, and that used to be a door.
Oh my.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had his children had an interesting story that Mike got excited with when they were here. They were laying in their bed one night, and one of them came to my side of the bed and woke me up, and they were here on visit, and she came next to me and she goes, Miss Laura, the fairies are pulling my bed sheets off.
Oh no.
And I
Oh,
said,
yeah.
the fairies? And she goes, yeah, it's like balls of light. And I came in there and I said, okay, sweetie. And I come in there. Her sister is still on this little bed that we had, asleep like a rock. And the comforter and the sheets are under all four legs of this bed.
What?
And I'm like, yes. And I was like, okay. And so I told Josh and I put her in bed, and he came and got the bigger one, and we just moved them in with us for the rest of the evening. And then we woke up and they were telling the story to our roommates. And she goes, yeah, the fairies. And he's like, what do you mean the fairies? And she goes, oh, they're little balls of light that are up by the ceiling shooting around. And he goes, what did you just say? And she goes, the little balls of light. And he goes, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you. And he was so relieved. He's like, I've seen that. I've seen it too. And he was relieved to have someone else who'd seen it, because Josh and I had not experienced that, but evidently Heather and Mike had in their room. They had balls of light that
Wow.
would shoot around.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. It was just a unique experience for everybody, because it had no limits at this point. Because some of the
We
real
turned our cameras off and recorders.
Oh yeah, we tried doing ghost hunting in the house, actually trying to do our own actual session, investigation, everything. And every time we would do it, everything would go full battery, full charge, ready to rock and roll.
Empty.
And within seconds, all of a sudden you hear this, everything
The
just shuts
camera,
off.
though, had an interesting video where it looked like something was messing with it before it figured out how to turn it off.
Yeah, you could sit there and tell when he would record and stop the recording, hit record again. You could see that something was messing with it, trying to move it.
You guys had to be sitting right on top of a nexus of some kind.
I mean, big time.
That's what
Whatever it was,
some people were thinking, that we invited over had similar thoughts of like a portal, other things of that nature. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, because I know some of the darker things that happened.
Oh yeah, this one
was the Superstorm Irene. There was supposed to be Hurricane Irene.
There's supposed to be a hurricane, not a hurricane.
This was like my experience. Like a tropical storm. I had been exhausted from work. I forget how many hours I had been working. So I just said, hey guys, I'm going to bed. And so I went upstairs to our room and went to sleep, and inadvertently I felt like I didn't get any sleep. I was aggravated because Laura comes in and goes, hey, here's some Croonway, kind of made something, thought you might be hungry. And I'm like, why are you waking me up? I just went to sleep. She goes, no, you've been asleep for like 6-7 hours now. And I'm like, what the heck? I said, y'all keep bothering me. And she goes, what do you mean, y'all? I said, everybody kept coming in the room. They're all staying in the room staring at me. And I started describing. She goes,
no one's been up there.
We've been downstairs watching a movie. So I had that. But the creepiest things for me was we had our closets had mirrors on them.
Yes.
And at one point, I was putting away some laundry and stuff, and
you saw Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, she would poke her head out from behind me.
Pearl.
We'll call her Pearl. Yeah. Pearl would poke her head out and just kind of smile, and I'd catch her eye real quick, and she would just disappear. But at one point, I remember I was putting stuff away, and I closed the door and I bent down to grab whatever was on the floor. And as I stood up, I looked at the mirror naturally, because you're standing in front of a mirror. When I stood up, the figure in the mirror, my reflection, was still bent down. And I kind of thought, well, that's odd. And as the reflection did, it kind of slowly stood up, and then it didn't really kind of fully look at me. But when it did, it had that kind of a very evil grin to it. And looked right back at me, and my reflection's eyes were like just as black as night.
That was probably one of the most intense things. And then,
well, the other one,
two big ones were this, and then the end.
Yeah, because the other one that I had at the end in
the shower curtain.
Well, yeah, I got creeped out by the shower curtain one time because I saw a hand go across it. But I
think she had a thing for Josh.
Apparently,
Pearl.
But the other thing that I had that really stuck out with me the most is I had woke up, something had disturbed, made me wake up, and I looked around, and I could see over into our little changing area that we had where our closets were. and there was I could see a figure that was walking around in circles, just pacing. You could just gave off this vibe that
It
it
was
was
disturbed.
aggravated, disturbed, annoyed. Laura was fast asleep, and I'm just kind of looked over. I'm going with that. Okay, kind of like what you were saying before. Don't acknowledge it. Don't acknowledge it.
Right.
But I can see it, and as soon as I did it, I was like, okay, I'm about to roll over. It's like it realized I was watching it.
Uh-oh.
And it got aggravated, looked at me, and marched straight for the bed. And before I could get up, I felt myself get thrown back on the bed and pinned down, and I couldn't move my arms. And as soon as I started to speak, I felt something go around my throat and around my mouth. And I'm like, what? And I'm trying to move to wake Laura up. I'm like, get off of me. And I can't move. And then eventually she starts to turn, and I can feel relief at that point. And I hear across the floor and gone. So
it was a very active place. Like, I mean, we had friends, family, neighbors, and we even had a party one time, like I said, where the dog got drug across the floor, and it was in front of several people, and the house was not shy at all. I think when Mike and Heather were moving on, right before they move, they're a married couple.
Yeah.
And I don't know how descriptive to be, but they had the house to themselves and had a little bit of romance time.
Took full advantage of that, right?
And and so she came and told me this. She's like, so I was laying there, he went and ran a shower and a bath, and I'm laying there. I decided to check something on my phone. She's like, I'm still fully, naked, and rolled over, checking on my phone. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and then I felt my hair move, and I thought it was just a draft. And I said, uh-huh. And she goes, and I'm just done with this house. I can't do it anymore. And so she said, my hair moved, and I thought it was a draft at first, but then I did it again, and it did it even more, where it crossed over my shoulder. And she pulled her hair back down, and then it moved, and she felt something blow on her neck.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so she said, we're done. We're done for lots of reasons. We found a job over here. Bye. We're going to still pay the rent, but we have to leave. And we're like,
so that was the thing that got them out. That's what they left.
They left specifically because of the activity that was going on.
It was intensifying.
Yeah. And I mean, there was lots of things going on, but that was probably when it came to the paranormal stuff. That was the end of that. And then,
it's almost like when we, because I had received orders to go to Oregon, and we were closing up and getting things wrapped up, and it's almost like the house was upset that we were leaving.
Because there was durations especially after they left, where it became really calm. And I can't explain that, because I don't blame them. It still was there. It still was happening. But when they left, for some reason, it became less aggressive.
Well, do you think that maybe they brought a specific energy with them, and the entities were feeding off of that specific energy, which made them a little stronger or more active?
Maybe.
It could be, yeah.
I think it's because, here's what I think. Okay, I'm not a professional at this at all, but I think it's because that Mike was so adamant of not believing that it was real, that they said, we're going to make you believe it's real.
That's true.
And we're going to be, and they were aggressive about it. I think that's what it is. I really do. I believe that.
That has some similarities with Skinwalker Ranch and some of the things that happened out there. You go out there and say, well, this is all just BS and everything. And then it happens just to prove you wrong.
Exactly. So. I think that might have been. So how long did you guys stay there?
We stayed for about 6 months to 9 months more. We were there for quite a while.
How many years did you live in there?
3 years.
3 years.
And then they offered us the house to buy.
Yeah.
And when I say offered us, it was almost like, here, just sign the dotted line.
they were basically giving it away. Say, here, take this house.
Basically, compared to what they paid, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I think when we left, we picked up our things, started packing, and that's when the home started getting active again. Like one night I came in from outside from helping Josh, and I felt like something was behind me, and I saw a shadow run up on me. It would throw stuff in the attic again. We heard the stomping again. And then I think the biggest, scariest one I've ever seen is the lady we call Pearl. Was usually, when I would see her, she looked beautiful, and her dress was just so, and her hair, and I would never dead on see her like I did the little girl, but I could see her when she'd cut across like a room, or I'd see some figure of her. And my roommates had seen her and Josh had seen her several times, but she always looked so put together. And then this one night I woke up and it felt really hot in the room, and it was towards the last week of us staying there. And I sat up in bed, and when I focused in, I saw someone looking out from this home. Used to have sunrooms. So we had the master room, and off to the side was a room that they converted into a baby room or an office, or you could turn it into really whatever, but it was it used to be a sunroom, like a sun deck. And in this little room off to the side of our master, directly in front of our bed, there's a door. And I saw a woman who was drenched and very gaunt, staring out of it. And her eyes, like when I say burrowed into me, they were burning into me. Like, I mean,
Wow.
She was so angry looking, and she was shaking and like looking from this doorway in the dark. My eyes didn't quite focus, and when they did, I just wish I could forget it.
Yeah.
And I remember waking Josh up and going, oh my gosh. And we'd never seen her wet, but the dress was the same. It was the same dress that Pearl was wearing. And so we wonder if the wet feet we kept finding with
Could
the
have
puddle
possibly been
could have
hers.
been hers. And we were seeing like maybe two versions of her, this
Happy and angry.
yeah, or whatever happened to her. Because I mean, you can always misread something when you don't understand the backstory to it. But from what I could see, I'll never forget her eyes. I'll never forget that ever.
Wow.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, like
Yeah.
I said, there's other things. We had people come over, and I'm sure you probably want to hear about that.
His children have stories.
My kids
They
have
still
stories.
remember
Yeah.
vividly.
My father refused to go inside the house.
Yeah.
He stayed outside next to the car, and my mom went with me, and she got done. She walked up to, she goes, beautiful place. But kind of
Leave.
like what you guys said earlier,
Leave.
move out.
Well, yeah.
Get out of here now.
I'm going to say,
I don't like it.
I'm your
Something's wrong.
dad. I'm going to be your dad. I'll be right here when y'all get ready to come out of there.
Somebody
Okay?
bring me a
You
beer.
don't have to
I'll be
worry
out
about
here
it.
in the yard.
Now we're at this point. We're out of time. We're going to have to go, but I've got to quickly ask you this: have you had this kind of experience at any other place you've ever lived in?
No, not
Not
to
to
this
this
level.
Not like this. Okay.
I want to say ever since living there, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like almost being touched, I guess. We've had activity that is noticeable,
But it's something different
nothing-
every time.
Every time.
Nothing like this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty
Um,
intense. I mean, from everything you've told us, I mean, wow.
I don't know if I'm going to sleep tonight.
I-
and
well,
I don't spook
Oh,
easily.
I got something to probably help keep you awake at night.
Save it for the next time. How's that?
Yeah. We'll definitely keep you guys on retainer and have you back to tell us more stories if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
down.
We'll definitely have you back, Laura and Josh McDaniels. We loved man, this has been great. A couple of great shows
man,
with you guys,
what-
telling us a lot of great stories and sharing a lot.
You said it earlier, either in the first episode we did with them or this one, I can't remember, but you said it's like watching a movie, and it really is.
It's like a movie.
I have never
This sounds
heard
like something out of a movie. I would not believe this unless you were telling me this and it actually happened to you.
Right,
You know?
I've never heard stories told with such clarity. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They had stuff happen to them that paranormal investigators would just die to have happen.
And you got the guy Mike. You got Mike there who came around and said, "Well, okay, I admit it. I saw something. Something happened to me.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it happened. That would have been me. I would have
Yeah.
been skeptical for a long time, and I probably would have come around. I would come around a lot sooner than Mike, though.
Yeah, I think you would.
No,
Yeah.
a lot sooner.
Well,
I
listen,
think that birthday on the stairs would have done
Yes.
it.
Oh, I know.
no
Yeah.
kidding.
And that would that would have got me out of the house. I wouldn't have stayed. I was no, I'm gone.
I'm going to the Motel 6. See y'all later.
I'll come by and visit.
It'd be like one of those in cartoons when someone takes off, you see the silhouette. Then
Oh,
go
yeah,
right
yeah.
through the wall.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. It's great meeting you guys and great listening to your great stories. I appreciate you guys coming on our show.
We appreciate
Not a problem.
we appreciate you a whole bunch, and I think we'll probably get you guys on to tell us some more of the stuff that we had to skip over sometime later on down the line.
All right.
You've been listening to the Price and Presley Spook Show, and don't forget that if you're listening or watching on YouTube, to go down and hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Like us, okay? And go to our Facebook page, facebook.com, Price Presley Spook Show, and also email us your stories. Let us know the spooky stuff that's happened to you, pricepresleyshow@gmail.com.
Also, don't forget, if you'd like to help support the show, then, excuse me, we have a Patreon account. If you'd like to become a patron, then we would love to have you help us out. Sometimes just $1 from 2 or 3 people helps more than you will ever know. So check that out. I'll make sure that there's a link in the comment section.
Yes.
And we've got more great episodes coming your way, folks. It's amazing how many people feel like sharing their stories. And some of these stories are just absolutely amazing. If you've listened to our previous episodes, we've had some pretty good stuff. But we will see you the next time right here on the Price and Presley Spook Show. I'm Terry Price.
I'm Harold Presley.
Don't get spooked.